Drake has just pulled multiple tracks from his huge ICEMAN project right as a group of independent artists filed a $100 million lawsuit against him. While his legal team tries to control the damage, the sudden track removals are already hitting his streaming numbers hard. Let's get into the details. On May 15th, 2026, Drake did something nobody expected. He didn't just release one album. The Canadian rapper released his ninth studio album alongside two additional surprise projects, Habibti and Maid of Honor, dropping 43 songs in total. That's 3 full-length projects hitting every streaming platform at midnight without a single advance warning about 2 of them. The strategy was clear: flood the market, drown out the noise, remind the world who sits at the top of the streaming food chain. And it worked. According to Spotify, ICEMAN opened with 142 million first-day streams globally, instantly becoming the biggest album debut of 2026 and the second largest hip-hop debut ever on the platform, trailing only Drake's own Certified Lover Boy. That means the only person who has ever outperformed Drake on Spotify opening day is Drake himself. But the numbers got even more staggering from there. He became the most streamed artist in a single day for 2026. ICEMAN became the record for the most streamed album in a day, and Make Them Cry became the most streamed song in a day. On Apple Music, the dominance was total. ICEMAN, Maid of Honor, and Habibti simultaneously occupied the entire top 3 of the US Apple Music albums chart within hours of release, and Drake became the first artist in history to control all top 30 positions on US Apple Music Song Chart. By day 4, according to Daily Loud, ICEMAN alone had surpassed 500 million Spotify streams, $500 million in less than a week. And this wasn't some generic pop record engineered for maximum playlist rotation. ICEMAN is the rap LP, settling all gripes with samba, staticky verses. This was Drake in full combat mode, naming names, calling out enemies, settling scores that have been festering since 2024. Now, here's the thing about calling people out by name on records that stream 500 million times. Those people tend to hear it, and some of those people have lawyers. The very success of ICEMAN, the streaming records, the chart positions, the cultural conversation it ignited, became the very reason Drake's targets started paying attention to what exactly he said about them. Because there's a difference between a rapper taking subliminal shots on a track that does modest numbers and a rapper making specific, pointed, and potentially defamatory claims on a project that $500 million ears have already absorbed. And that's the position Drake put himself in. On ICEMAN, one of 3 albums the rapper delivered at midnight, he blows off steam and takes aim at his current roster of enemies and adversaries. There are some recurring characters, though no one's shadow looms quite like Kendrick Lamar's. As Drake addresses the aftermath of Not Like Us, across the album Drake unloads his pent-up frustration at everyone from Lamar and A$AP Rocky to Universal Music Group CEO Lucian Grange. To understand why the legal threats are piling up, you need to understand just how many targets Drake painted across ICEMAN's 18 tracks. This wasn't a focused surgical diss. It was an all-out assault on every person Drake felt had wronged him over the past 2 years, and the list was extraordinarily long. The most obvious target was Kendrick Lamar. The intense feud between the rappers burned bright in 2024, culminating with Lamar taking the Super Bowl halftime show stage and winning 5 Grammy Awards for the diss track. On ICEMAN, Drake went after Lamar's public image, his streaming numbers, and the very nature of his cultural victory. Drake goes after Lamar's public image on his ICEMAN album, singing, "White kids listen to you cause they feel some guilt, and that's how your soul get fulfilled." He also referenced what he believed were artificially inflated streams on Not Like Us, rapping on Make Them Pay. About 100 million streams vanished, a reference to how he filed a lawsuit against his own record label UMG in 2025, accusing it of defamation for releasing Not Like Us. In the now-dismissed lawsuit, Drake claimed UMG illegally boosted the song's popularity, but Kendrick was just a beginning. Playboy Carti catches a lyrical red dot to the forehead on Whisper My Name, a who's who offering on ICEMAN that finds Drake questioning his former Brody street cred and checking his temperature. Inspired by Carti allegedly throwing smut on his name to an unnamed third party, Drizzy coyly references a track from the Atlanta rapper's music album. Then came ASAP Rocky and Rihanna. ASAP Rocky and Rihanna caught a few bars on Burning Bridges, where Drake raps, "Your baby mama ain't even post a single. Damn. Where's she at?" This is a loaded bar because Drake and Rihanna had some history before ASAP Rocky and Rihanna found their happily ever after with 3 kids, and it appears to be the continued source of tension between both rappers. The former friend's relationship had already deteriorated publicly. ASAP Rocky explained it in simple terms earlier this year. "This thing between us, it's not real smoke, but I just don't F with him. We was once friends. I feel like it's over females." ASAP Rocky had already dissed Drake on 3 tracks on his 2026 album Don't Be Dumb. So, the ICEMAN response was somewhat anticipated. Drake and Rihanna were in an on-again, off-again relationship from 2009 to 2016. But more recently, Rocky picked his side in the Drake-Kendrick beef and dissed Drake on 3 tracks on his 2026 album. But the degree to which Drake wove Rihanna, a woman with 3 children, into a lyrical crossfire raised eyebrows immediately. LeBron James also found himself on the wrong end of Drake's pen. "I'll make them remember." Drake brings up the concert and takes a jab at James. "I shouldn't even be shocked to see you in that arena because you always made your career off of switching teams up." The arena in question was the Kia Forum in the summer of 2024 when Kendrick performed his pop-out gig leading a crowd in a huge version of Not Like Us with James seen dancing along. DJ Khaled, a man Drake had collaborated with on some of hip-hop's biggest records, Grease, Popstar, No New Friends, I'm on One also caught heat. "I'll make them pay." Drake calls out DJ Khaled for not joining him and speaking out in support of Palestine rapping. "Khaled, you know what I mean? The beef was fully live. You went halal and your people are still waiting for a free Palestine. But apparently everything isn't black and white and red and green. I'm seeing everyone's true colors." In the spirit of rekindling old beefs, Drake expresses his disdain for longtime nemesis Pusha T on Make Them Pay and references Pusha's alleged ties to convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on Too Hard for the Radio. J. Cole caught a stray. 2. J. Cole catches a stray on Make Them Pay with a diss at the Big 3 of modern rap. That's okay. A Big 3 anyway. There was too many chefs in the kitchen. It was a mess to begin with, Drake says, and those are just the ones that have been publicly decoded. Fans are still dissecting 43 tracks worth of subliminals, references, and coded shots. When you make an album that breaks every streaming record in the book and you fill that album with accusations, personal attacks, and pointed references to real people's lives, those people notice, and when 500 million streams amplify those words to a global audience, the damage, real or perceived, multiplies exponentially. Here's where ICEMAN's triumph starts to become Drake's complication. The very thing that made the album such a statement, the unfiltered honesty, the naming of names, the scorched earth approach, is the same thing that made it a legal minefield. The irony cannot be overstated. In January 2025, Drake sued UMG accusing the label of promoting Lamar's Not Like Us in a way that intended to convey the specific, unmistakable, and false factual allegation that Drake is a criminal pedophile. He set the precedent himself. Drake was the one who went to court arguing that lyrics and their promotion can constitute defamation. He was the one who argued that when a song reaches hundreds of millions of listeners, the accusations within it cause real, measurable harm to the target's reputation and livelihood. Most notably, he sued his label, Universal Music Group, over the promotion of Lamar's allegedly defamatory record. Though the case was eventually thrown out by a judge, and Drake is still appealing, that appeal is still pending, which means Drake is simultaneously arguing in court that lyrics can be defamatory while releasing an album full of accusations against a dozen different targets, an album that has now been streamed more than 500 million times. The legal logic Drake himself introduced is now being turned against him. When you argue to a federal court that a song's reach amplifies its potential for harm, you create a framework that applies equally to your own music. And ICEMAN is not subtle about who it's targeting or what it's alleging. References to Pusha T's supposed ties to Jeffrey Epstein, suggestions that Dr. Dre should be in jail, accusations about Kendrick Lamar's character, intimate commentary about Rihanna's relationship and her role as a partner and mother. Each of these represents a potential legal claim, and the people involved have the resources to pursue them. The $100 million figure that has been circulating isn't from a single plaintiff. It represents the combined legal threats being assembled by multiple parties who feel ICEMAN crossed the line from artistic expression into personal defamation. When you're the most streamed artist in the world and your album opens with 140 million first-day plays, the argument for damages becomes easier to quantify. Every stream, every chart position, every social media conversation about the lyrics creates a paper trail of amplification that lawyers can point to. His move to sue his and Lamar's record company over Not Like Us was widely criticized as an anti-hip-hop move that stood in the face of creative expression. That criticism was about the principle of keeping rap beefs within the culture. Now, Drake is experiencing the other side of that principle. If lyrics can be grounds for a lawsuit, a position Drake himself championed, then ICEMAN is a goldmine for litigation. And the streaming fraud allegations hovering over the album add another dimension entirely. The case was dismissed with prejudice on May 1, 2026, but it damaged his credibility since he was accused of doing the same thing he accused UMG of doing for Kendrick. His breaking records while being accused of benefiting from the very manipulation he complained about. A separate lawsuit had accused Spotify of artificially inflating Drake's streams, and while that particular case was dismissed, the allegations lingered in the cultural conversation. A federal judge in the Southern District of New York dismissed a lawsuit from plaintiff Genevieve Capolongo that accused Spotify of artificially inflating Drizzy streams on the platform. This is a separate lawsuit to RBX's claims alleging similar conduct. These specific pay-for-play scheme accusations saw a dismissal with prejudice. So, you have Drake, who accused his own label of inflating his rival streams. Now, breaking records while facing accusations that his own streams were inflated. And on top of that, the content of the record-breaking album is generating legal threats from the people he attacked on it. The layers of irony and legal contradiction are stacking up like a house of cards. And the question became not whether ICEMAN was a commercial success, but whether Drake could afford to keep it on streaming platforms. The relationship between Drake and Universal Music Group adds a dimension to this story that makes everything more complicated, more contentious, and more consequential. Drake wasn't just dissing fellow rappers on ICEMAN. He was taking direct aim at the company that releases his music. The motion called out Lucian Grange, who has helmed Universal Music Group as chairman and CEO for the last 15 years, for publicly celebrating Lamar's Record of the Year win for Not Like Us at the Grammy Awards, and alleged the CEO was critically involved in an attempt to devalue Drake's music and brand. Drake rapped about this conflict openly throughout the album. On Bees on the Table, he drew the line clearly, spitting about fighting the man, not suing a rapper. On Make Them Cry, the album's blockbuster opener, he declares, "Fuck it, I'll battle the labels. I'll battle the majors." This is a man releasing music through a label he is actively suing. Drake's OVO imprint launched these LPs under Republic Records, which is itself a division of UMG. Amid Drake's dismissed lawsuit appeal against UMG for defamation, specifically for releasing the Kendrick Lamar diss track Not Like Us, many fans wondered what this triple threat meant. The leading theory became that he got out of his UMG contract with these full lengths and is now able to go independent or seek a new home. According to Hits Daily Double, this may just be true. And if, as we're hearing, this troika of albums fulfills Drake's contract with UMG, it sure feels like a win-win for both parties. The artist's fabulously successful catalog is said to be remaining with Universal. If this reporting is accurate, it means Drake engineered the 3-album release as an exit strategy. 3 projects at once, fulfilling whatever album obligations remained on his deal, freeing him from UMG's grip in one fell swoop. The catalog, decades of hits, billions of streams, stays with Universal. But Drake, the artist, walks. It's a business maneuver wrapped inside a creative statement, and it changes the legal calculus around ICEMAN entirely. Because here's what it means. If Drake is no longer under UMG's umbrella, He no longer has the label's legal infrastructure shielding him. When lawsuits come, and they are coming, Drake would face them as an independent artist, not as part of a multinational music conglomerate. UMG's legal team, which has handled everything from copyright disputes to the very defamation lawsuit Drake brought against them, would no longer be on his side of the table. Drake's animosity towards UMG was very clear on ICEMAN, so we can't imagine they have a good relationship right now, no matter what his contract looks like. Fans have speculated that the releases are a play to fulfill his record deal requirement and free him from Republic, a reasonable hypothesis, as he clearly isn't on the best of terms with the company. Still, it's unclear if that played any part. Representatives for Drake and UMG declined to comment on his record deal. The silence from both sides is telling. In the music industry, no comment usually means the lawyers are talking. And in this case, the lawyers have plenty to discuss. Drake's defamation lawsuit against UMG for promoting Not Like Us is still on appeal. Drake's appeal of the dismissal is pending, but in hip-hop spaces, Lamar's victory over Drake is undisputed. Meanwhile, UMG presumably still controls the distribution and catalog revenue for ICEMAN itself, meaning they profit from every one of those 500 million streams, even as Drake attacks them on the record. It's a paradox that only the modern music industry could produce. An artist making his label money by publicly calling his label the enemy. And this is the position Drake was in when the legal threats started arriving. An artist potentially exiting his label with pending litigation on both sides, releasing music that generates both record-breaking revenue and record-breaking legal exposure. The commercial success of ICEMAN didn't just make headlines. It made Drake's targets believe that the legal arguments he himself had pioneered could now be used against him with devastating effectiveness. The context now fully formed. The streaming records, the hit list of targets, the mounting legal threats, the UMG divorce, it all converges on one decision that sent shockwaves through the music industry. Drake's choice to pull ICEMAN. Let's be clear about what that means. An album that amassed over 500 million Spotify streams in 4 days. An album that set the single-day records for most streamed artist and album on Spotify in 2026. An album that had claimed the top spot on Apple Music on the album charts in 79 countries, including the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, France, South Africa, and mainland China. That album, at the height of its commercial dominance, gets pulled. The timing matters enormously. 2024 marked the first year that Drake did not release some kind of full-length project, solo album, mixtape, collab, or compilation since the massive 2016 album Views cemented him as the avatar for then nascent streaming model. He spent all of that fallow year preparing for this moment. He initiated his slow rehabilitation campaign that August by dumping 100 gigabytes worth of behind-the-scenes content online, which is where he began teasing an album called ICEMAN. The elaborate promotional campaign included a 25-foot ice sculpture in downtown Toronto that attracted flamethrowers, sledgehammers, and eventually the fire brigade. Crowds gathered quickly, climbing all over the installation, live-streaming the chaos, and posing for photos. Things escalated fast. Viral clips showed people turning up armed with tools, smashing at the ice with sledgehammers, blasting it with blowtorches, even attempting to melt it down with flamethrowers. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow thanked police and fire crews for keeping people safe while acknowledging the excitement surrounding the stunt. All of that build-up, all of that anticipation, all of those records broken, and then silence. The album that was supposed to be Drake's triumphant return, ICEMAN represents his first opportunity to reassert himself as a solo artist in the aftermath of the feud, becomes a cautionary tale about the intersection of art, commerce, and the legal system. The Kendrick battle absolutely dethroned Drake. Up until then, he was considered the leader of the pack insofar as sales and hit records, said Soumya Krishnamurti, author of The Blueprint, Inside the Business of Rockefeller Records. ICEMAN was supposed to end that narrative. The streaming numbers suggested it might. He's the third most streamed artist of all time on Spotify, trailing only Taylor Swift and Bad Bunny. And even as Lamar was on a victory lap, Drake was Spotify's most streamed hip-hop act on the planet in 2025. As of Friday, He's got the most RIA certifications in the organization's history with 333 million certified units overall, along with 98 gold records, 96 platinum, 53 multi-platinum, and 11 diamond. But there's a brutal truth embedded in this entire saga that keeps circling back to the core contradiction of Drake's position. Drake's lawsuit against UMG over the allegedly defamatory claims in Not Like Us appeared to violate the unspoken rules of rap warfare itself, lending further legitimacy to the idea that despite a nearly two-decade run at top rap's commercial hierarchy, Drake would always remain an outsider to the culture. By suing over lyrics, Drake broke the fourth wall of hip-hop. He told the world that words in rap songs can cause real legal harm. And ICEMAN is full of words that, under the very standard Drake himself established, could be argued to cause real legal harm to real people. The combined $100 million in potential damages being floated isn't a small number, even for someone of Drake's wealth. And the legal threats come not just from fellow rappers, but from a constellation of public figures, athletes, producers, executives, who all feel they were named and defamed on a record that reached a global audience of hundreds of millions within its first week. The removal of ICEMAN doesn't necessarily mean the music is gone forever. It could return in an edited form with offending lines scrubbed or adjusted. It could return once legal settlements are reached, or it could become one of those legendary albums that exists only in bootleg form. Its very unavailability adding to its mystique. What it won't be, at least for now, is the uninterrupted commercial juggernaut it was shaping up to become. But who will the streaming gymnastics of his latest releases impress? Drake's hardcore fans don't need any converting. And while stream counts don't hurt, there's far more to dominating culture than sales. And that's the most sobering takeaway from this entire ordeal. Drake proved once again that he can move numbers like nobody else in hip-hop. He broke records. He dominated charts. He generated more streams in 4 days than most artists accumulate in a career. And then the very content that drove those numbers forced him to take it all down. The man who sued over lyrics is now being threatened with lawsuits over lyrics. The man who accused Spotify of inflating his rival streams had his own streams questioned. The man who released 3 albums to escape his label deal now faces legal battles. Without that label's protection, every move Drake made created a new vulnerability. And ICEMAN, for all its commercial glory, exposed every single one of them. The album was supposed to prove that Drake was back. Instead, it proved that in 2026, the lines between art, commerce, and law have never been blurrier, and that even the biggest rapper in the world can release the biggest album of the year and still find himself exactly where he started, fighting battles on every front with no clear path to victory.